In a contest against supernatural forces, the protagonists face a formidable adversary, Daniel Cruz, who seems to possess a life that cannot be easily taken. After trying various methods, Vergil realizes that only through ancient magic and a deal with the divine can they hope to defeat Daniel. However, harnessing such power is not without cost. Vergil must sacrifice something of his own or risk losing everything. Thank you for your subscription and likes. I hope you will leave your comments in the comments section. Chapter 27 Major. Kana yelled, pointing at the shade across the street. "Is here," Major Coleman said though the phone. Our pickup was still nowhere to be seen. Leo immediately trained his flashlight to the shade. No effect. We all followed suit. But even with all our lights combined, it didn't harm the shade. The shade took a step forward and jumped down the concrete barrier. But the lights were green. A car slammed into the shade, dragging the shade with its front bumper a good distance away. The driver must have floored the brakes because the tires were squealing. The car started swerving, and then crashed into the concrete barrier, pinning the shade. "It didn't work," I said. "The LRT," Major Coleman said. "I thought we were supposed to avoid public places," Leo said. "We have no choice. Now go," Major said. We turned around and flew up the stairs. We didn't have any ticket. When we passed through the metal detectors, Major had a quick conversation with the security guards on duty. They made us use the side gate by the side of the automatic turnstiles instead. We caught the southbound train with its doors still open. There were already a lot of passengers fighting their way inside the already jam-packed car doors. But Major Coleman took us to the car reserved only for female passengers, so it wasn't as crowded and rowdy as the other cars. We hopped in as the doors were closing. I kept my eyes on the stairs, expecting the head of the shade to come into view as it climbed up. But the train lurched forward and I only saw wave after wave of commuters coming up. From the look of their faces, either they didn't notice the commotion below or they couldn't care less. I leaned my back against the wall and slid down. A sigh of relief escaped my lips. The rest joined me on the cold, metal floor. Except for Major Coleman, who just grabbed hold of the handrails instead. He doesn't even look out of breath. Is 5 minutes rest too much to ask? Kana complained. We were so tired and freaked out that we almost didn't notice the judgmental stares we were getting from the passengers. Whatever they must be thinking about us now, I'm sure it's not nice. I'd probably react the same way if a bunch of teenagers tumbled inside, looking all sweaty and panicked. They must be thinking of not getting involved. And that would be the right decision. But Major Coleman decided to address the issue. He immediately brought out his customer service smile and explained that we 4 kids have agoraphobia. He was helping us overcome our fear by starting with a small crowd, so he picked this car. Then he pulled his wallet out, flipped it open and flashed it like it was a badge. The ladies leaned over to steal glances at us. Some offered kind words, saying how we were all brave for choosing to face our fears. It was beyond ridiculous that we momentarily forgot the fact that the shade was still on us. I was startled by this development because of course we had to act the part. Otherwise, we risk being found out as haunteds. I made a mental note to have a serious talk with Major about springing situations like this onto us. I'm not much of an actor, but we have no choice. So I thanked them in a small voice, keeping my head down and hugging myself tight that I was visibly shaking. That was the image I thought a terrified kid should look like anyway. Leo was shaking all right, but I'm pretty sure that was because he was trying so hard not to laugh. Demi and Kana had no problem looking all scared and meek, which was no surprise considering the shade just practically ambushed us. But Kana really sold it. She was actually crying. Weak, almost silent sobs. Real tears. Too real, that when the other passengers left us alone, I immediately turned over to her. "Kana, hey." I couldn't hide the worry in my voice. In response, she looked up to me and an annoying smug spread over her face. "Got you too, huh? I can feel my face burning." "You're the worst," I said, looking away. But I can't stop myself from smirking. There was still no sign of the shade. I felt the muscles on the back of my neck loosen up. Maybe it cannot keep up with the speed of the train. But even so, all it had to do was to take shadow form and appear anywhere inside this train, then take its physical form again. like it did last night when it withdrew its black tendrils and dropped the ceiling on us. Wait here, Major Coleman said. Then he walked down the aisle, weaving through the crowd of passengers, and disappeared behind the door towards the next car. Where do you think he's going? Leo asked. No idea, I said. Hey, Demi said. What do you think happened to that driver? I'm sure he's fine, Leo said. Right, Vergil? Yeah, it was the best I could manage. But Leo came up with something better. He's fine. The shade should have lost interest in the driver the moment we ran out of there, he said. I guess this is what he and Eris do best. But without Eris, he tried to bring me to it. It's just that, right now, my mind is on the fact that our lights did nothing. I motioned for them to come closer to me. Our lights. I whispered. It didn't do anything. Maybe because it's so small. Leo suggested, holding his light between his thumb and index finger. Are there different kinds of you? V. Lights. Kana asked. No one answered. If there are different kinds, then that would explain what just happened. Or is Leo right? Does size really matter in this kind of situation? The P. A system chimed as it always does before making an announcement. Thank you for riding with us today. This is an express train bound for Dimasalang. Next stop is Dimasalang Station. Dimasalang Station. The passengers started panicking. Some students were shocked. What? I didn't know this was an express train. Wait, that can't be right. That's 3 stations over my stop. Honey, I'm going to be late. Looks like I rode the express train. Haha. Love you. The car door slid open again. Major Coleman came back. A little heads up would be nice, I said. A smile spread over Major Coleman's face. I trusted your acting skills. I almost lost it, Leo said. But Major Coleman just shrugged. Better that than being scared. I blinked. You mean you chose the most absurd explanation on purpose just to make us laugh? I need you kids to act normal, Major Coleman said. Yes, because it's normal for a group of agoraphobic teenagers to get on a train, Kana retorted. Fear makes people panic, lose control of themselves, especially their mouths. Can't have you kids accidentally blurting out our situation, Major Coleman explained. Major, I said, were the lights your men were using different from store-bought? Major Coleman thought about it for a while. I didn't ask for such specification, so I believed them to be the same. Can't be sure, though. Is it weird that the shade still hasn't come back? Kana said. Demi jolts straight up as if someone poked him from behind with a sharp object. Then he remembered where he was and whispered, you think it went over to the other groups? Let me check. Major Coleman pulled out his walkie-talkie and made a call. I took this time to look around while Major Coleman was busy on the phone. Bring them there, Major Coleman said, ending the call. Then, I caught someone staring at us. When someone caught me staring at them, I reflexively look away. But this guy held his gaze. Yes, there was another male besides us inside the female car. Corporate attire. Neatly combed hair. And he looks young, I would guess he's in his early 20s. But aside normal looks, he was creeping me out. His eyes were wide open. His jaw went slack. Like he recognized us and he's trying to remember from where. But that's impossible. I haven't seen this man in my entire life. I tried to break away and look at him again. And saw his eyes still fixed on me. Wait, maybe not on me. On us. I saw his face lit up. He made his way down towards us. This can't be good. Chapter 28. Major, I said, motioning my head in the direction of the guy. Major Coleman seemed to understand what I mean and immediately placed himself between the guy and us. When the guy got close enough, Major Coleman put his hand on the guy's shoulder. Can I help you? He asked. The guy pulled out his cell phone and played a video. It was the same news we saw this afternoon. Back at the hotel. He turned to me again. That's you, isn't it? He was considerate enough to lower his voice when he said that. There's something about his voice that bothers me. I'm sure I heard his voice before. I started thinking maybe he was a Twitch streamer or one of the YouTuber I subscribed to. But when the guy on the video started talking, it all made sense. You, I said. You took the video. He nodded. I watched the video on his phone. There was no news logo, no news feed flashing down the bottom of the screen. That proved it. So what do you want out of this? Major Coleman said. The truth, the guy said. I want to know what exactly that thing is. He held his phone in front of Major Coleman's face when the shade was being focused on. But of course, cameras cannot capture any images of the shade, so the shot tightened in on the sidewalk. Major Coleman played dumb. That's called a sidewalk. Yeah, that's not gonna work, the guy said. I saw it myself, okay. If you don't want to tell me, fine. In fact, you don't have to say anything. Your face will tell me what I needed to know. The guy slid his phone to his back pocket. Was it the shade? My neck tingled when he said that. I looked away because if he sees my reaction, my face is definitely screaming yes. First, the shade ambushed us. Then our lights did nothing. Then there's this guy. Could this night get any worse? I looked at Kana. She wasn't hiding her surprise any better than me. This was the worst possible time for someone to make the connection, with the shade just behind us. But Major Coleman had the best poker face ever. Suppose I tell you what you want to hear. What are you going to do with that information? Nothing. I just want to know if I'm on its menu. Unfortunately, I cannot honor your request. However, I would kindly ask you to keep all this matter confidential. Major Coleman held out his hand. I'll be taking your phone as well. You will be reimbursed, of course. Surprisingly, the guy agreed. Go ahead, take it. I've got plenty where that came from. I'll send someone to drop by. Major Coleman just smiled. Thank you for your cooperation. But the guy wouldn't let it go. You know, we're in a very compact and private place. So, Leo said, clearly annoyed by the guy. What's stopping me from shouting what I know? Major Coleman just scoffed. Good luck with that. The moment the guy turned around, Major Coleman karate chopped him on the back of his neck. His body fell to us. We caught him from falling, dragged his body to the corner and stood around him, hiding his limp body on the floor behind our legs. It happened so fast, so silent that nobody even glanced up from their phones.
Di masalang station. Di masalang station.
That was awesome, Demi whispered to Major Coleman. Can you do that? Leo asked, looking straight at the crowd. Doesn't matter. I had to. We don't have the time to entertain people like him, Major Coleman said. Our train was slowing down. The car doors slid open and we went out with the wave of the crowd. Should we just leave him there? I asked. What if he talks? He will, Major Coleman said. But right now we've got bigger problems to worry about. Now run. We flew down the stairs and ran. Major Coleman's back was our finish line. We ran as if death himself was chasing us, which was a really accurate description of our situation. We turned around a building, ran through red lights, lamppost after lamppost. We ran. We ran as far as our legs could take us. We ran even when my chest was burning. After turning another corner, I saw several soldiers at the checkpoint at the distance. A couple of armored military vehicle creates a barrier in front of the checkpoint and the metal gates. We've made it. We reached the barricade of soldiers and vehicles, panting, legs incredibly sore. The vehicles parked had signal light mounted on top. I didn't expect to see familiar faces to spill out of two other civilian cars. Kato, Harmony, and Indigo, Darius. Confusion makes me ignore the exhaustion and I walked up to them. Their drivers also stepped out to meet us. What are they doing here? Kana asked Major Coleman. They were attacked, Major Coleman explained. I didn't have the time to explain back at the train. I asked Kato, you've got searchlights, right? It didn't work, he said calmly, as he usually is. Same. The UV lights didn't do anything. Caprice added. So it's not the lights, I said out loud. You guys too? Darius asked. Wait, Kana said. Then, how did you survive? It disappeared right after it destroyed our lights. Driver 1 said. When I called ahead, the dorm was already wrecked. Which means you were completely vulnerable, Major Coleman asked. Why would it disappear just like that? We don't know, sir, Driver 2 said. After it destroyed the hotel's UV lights, it just vanished. So what? It took the trouble to destroy the lights, knowing it wouldn't hurt it, and just left you alone. Kana asked. I know how it sounds. But I'm telling you, that's what happened, Darius said. My eyebrows knitted themselves tight. It doesn't make sense. It does, Kato said. All the attention turned to him. It destroyed all the lights and the two other safe houses, yet it disappeared. With no lights and no place to go, Major Coleman then had all of us brought to this place to protect us. It wants us to come here, I said. All haunteds in one place. But why? Kana asked. Why even bother contact? A soldier called out. Our heads turned to where he was pointing. Under the empty waiting shed of a bus stop was the shade. Fully formed. Immediately, searchlights and the signal lights of the vehicles were turned on, creating a wall of violet light in front of us. We're safe. There's no way this thing can come near us. The shade zoomed towards us. The shade's body was completely immersed in violet light, and the shade vanished, leaving no trace behind. We survived another night. At least that's what was supposed to happen. But instead, the shade kept on coming. Chapter 29. Get back. Major Coleman ordered us. His men created a second wall of riot shields. Major Coleman directed us towards the entrance on the left of the gate. I went in last, allowing myself a glimpse of the shade's elongated scythe arm slicing the line of soldiers through their waists in one swift stroke. The riot shields were useless. We kept running. I looked back at the entrance, expecting the shade to follow us through there. There was a sharp, metallic zing, and the gate fell in 3 parts, clanging against the concrete. Screams erupted. Major Coleman shouted for us to keep moving, but it was too late. The shade got to us. Got me. It grabbed me by my neck. It was crushing my throat. I clawed at the arm choking me, but under its soft, jelly-like skin, my fingers dug into its solid, fleshy inside, and it was cold. Freezing, biting cold. I kicked. I pulled. My friends tried their best to make the shade let go. Leo smashed the searchlight he had on the shade's arm. The shade didn't even flinch. Demi was throwing stones at its face. Scarlet's tongue lashed out a string of insults and trash talks. But Caprice thought asking politely was the way to go. Major Coleman stepped up to the shade's side, leveled a gun at its head and pulled the trigger. But the shade stood still, the bullet still lodged in its temple. Then I realized, it was completely still. I raised a hand. Guys, stop, I said, croaking out each word. They must have realized something's off too because they stopped. That's when the shade's face was pulled apart and an empty skull pushed through. The shade's grip on my neck prevented me from screaming. But my arms were free. I dug my elbow on its arm repeatedly, frantic to get away, but I was forced to watch as the eyes popped out of the empty eye sockets. The eyes rolled down to reveal brown pupils. Fibers of muscles started weaving themselves. It was like looking at an anatomical dummy in class with the see-through bones and removable organs. But instead of plastic, this one is made of living flesh. A screeching voice was coming out of the shade and slowly becoming an unmistakable scream of that of a man. All the hair in my body stood up. This thing must have adapted its vocal cords to match a human's. A pair of ears grew out and brown skin stretches itself, covering everything up till I am now looking at the face of a man. The nose had been the last to form. Strands of shadow from the shade's original body clung onto the side of the man's face like ligaments to bones. But the worst part is that I recognized this face. The narrow chin, the thick eyebrows, the mole beneath his left eye. There's no mistaking it. I saw him on one of the pictures Major Coleman showed us back at the museum. My friends shrieked and took a few steps back. Major Coleman ran away. You, I croaked. I stopped struggling and focused more on getting the words out. You're the cult leader, Daniel. Cruz. He let go of me. The moment I hit the concrete, arms slid under my armpits and I was whisked up to my feet. I got you, Darius said. I rubbed my neck, coughing. It was sore, and hopefully that's all. Soon, rows of soldiers surrounded the shade, or rather Daniel, who was busy admiring his new body. There you, V, searchlights on. But at this point it was no different from a regular one. So they raised their firearms and opened fired. So this is my body now, the cult leader Daniel said after the barrage. His face was full of holes. But the wounds spat out the bullets and closed themselves up real Wolverine-like. Not bad. Not bad at all. How? You, I said. I found myself moving closer to him. Curiosity and shock had overwritten my fear of dying. He looked at me. What year is it? 2025. 51 years. Huh. You should be dead. And now you're... The shade. The shade. Daniel said, looking confused. Oh, is that what you call this body? He examined his arms again, smiling the entire time. The shade, huh. Catchy. I like it. The soldiers were about to open fire again when I asked them to stop. Someone's curious, Daniel said, clearly amused. He turned his attention to the soldiers. Gentlemen, how about the soldiers open fire again? Stop that. Daniel's voice rose above the barrage. In an instant, tendrils shot out of his shade body, destroying the soldiers' weapons but sparing their UV lights. It is very rude to interrupt someone, Daniel said. Didn't they teach you that in the army? He took a step forward. The soldiers again pointed their UV lights at him to no effect. You want to know how I did it? Daniel said to us. Screw that, Leo said, stepping forward as if everything that's happening is completely normal. He looked more angry than scared. I want to know why the lights don't kill you anymore. Do you know where the moon gets its light? Daniel said. It reflects the light from the sun, I said. Correct. Now, do you still see the moon? I thought that this was a stupid question. Or maybe a question to distract us so he can kill us all the minute we looked up. But if he wanted to kill us, he would have already done so. Then he looked up to the sky. We followed him and saw that something's missing. The moon's gone. Indigo said. It was true. There were stars. Some clouds. But the most obvious thing wasn't there. It's called the new moon. A phase of the lunar cycle where the moon is positioned in a way that it doesn't reflect sunlight, Daniel explained. It's not gone. It's still there, our eyes just can't see it. Thank you for the unwanted science lecture, Professor, I said, my voice returning to normal. But what does that have to do with anything? Daniel laughed. There is a reason why my body, the shade, can only appear during the night. That's because the sun is your weakness, Indigo said. Right again, Daniel said, wearing a proud smile. Man, I am starting to like you. How about it? Want to join my brotherhood? Of course, girls are welcome, too. We're inclusive like that. Explain yourself first, I said. Very well, then. Yes, the sun is my weakness. It shuts the link the primordials have on my soul close, so they cannot channel their energy through me. That's why the shade cannot appear during daylight, even in the darkest places, like under the bed or inside the closet. He laughed. And you're thinking that UV lights are the same as sunlight. But you're wrong. It was the moonlight that made your UV lights lethal to me. He walked toward us. The soldiers drew their sidearm and raised it at Daniel's face. Get back. One of them said, which was, of course, an empty threat. Some stood in front of us, as if that would make a difference. The moon reflects sunlight back to us here, greatly weakening my constitution that a poor imitation of the sun's ray, such as your UV lights, is enough to deconstruct my body. But now that the moon is dark, this he snatched a searchlight from one of the soldiers and holds it up can no longer harm me, he said, crushing the searchlight in his hand. Now that the shade has a voice and a face, and wants to toy with us, to brag about his newfound powers, I found myself less scared. Because now I know that he wouldn't kill us outright, and there's some comfort knowing that. Personally, I want some explanation of what we're seeing right now. Even though they know that they cannot do anything, the soldiers didn't abandon us. Is it just me, or the dude actually made a lot of sense? Leo asked. But he's crazy, Kana said to Leo. She turned to Daniel. Excuse me, you're crazy, you drink blood, you're not supposed to make sense. Something landed on Daniel's feet. A small green canister. Gray smoke filled up the place, obscuring us from his vision. They must have received orders through their earpiece because the soldiers immediately put up a wall of riot shield in front of us, pushing us back before an explosion occurred where Daniel was standing. A succession of fireballs erupted. My ears were ringing. We may be safe from shrapnel, but each explosion boomed inside my chest. And it was hot, like standing in front of an open oven. On our left, Major Coleman and his men, equipped with grenade launchers that looked like huge revolvers, were bombarding Daniel with explosive rounds. The soldiers got us inside the building and dragged us inside a bare room with stackable plastic seats spread out, white walls and no windows. They must have thought we were safe here. But we all knew it was wasted effort. The UV lights were our only defense. And now it's gone. Maybe they can kill him, Demi said when the soldiers left us. His head is human. Without a head, he can't kill us, right? No one answered. Outside, the explosions were still going on. We have to get out of here. Split up. By time till morning, Cato said. It's our only chance. Your guardian doesn't know when he's beat. It was Daniel's voice. We whipped towards the direction of his voice. At the corner of the room, Daniel was standing. His face was whole, no burns, no pieces of shrapnel. When do you think they'll realize? Why are you doing this? Caprice asked. You've already won. Oh, but I haven't. Daniel said, walking up to us. Not yet. Not until I have full control. New moon or not. And for that, you need our blood. I asked. What does our blood have to do with anything? You Zodiac-borns are like battery cells for the Celestial's power, Daniel said. The light within you, in your blood, in your flesh, no matter how strong, lies dormant. By consuming you, I can tap into the celestial energies inside. In its dormant state, it wouldn't harm me. In fact, by merely exposing it to the void energies in my body, I can corrupt it, transform it into void energies and use it to strengthen power, hence my control. My body is that of the void, so it should work. So that's why you destroyed the other 2 safe houses, so you can keep us all in one place to perform the ritual again, Cato said. Although I love the chase, Daniel Leader said. It will be a while before the next new moon, so I'm kind of on a tight schedule here. So sunlight is still fatal to you? I asked. Daniel smirked. Wouldn't you want to know? He raised his hand and every shadow in the room darkened with the same hue of the shade, as if gaining mass, becoming solid. Then the shadows crawled all over the walls, the door, the ceiling. So we won't be disturbed. Daniel said, it is impossible to miss someone, especially him, inside this room. We didn't notice him because he simply wasn't here. If his body is still the shade, that he can just materialize at any location at will, then there's no running from him. Cato's plan wouldn't work. All we can do is to discourage him from going on with his plan. Chapter 30. It shouldn't be hard to distract him. He was trapped inside wherever he was for 5 decades. And now he's back with all this power. Of course, he's going to want to talk about it. He's been practically bragging about it ever since he grew his mouth. If it weren't for the smoke grenade, I have a feeling he'll keep on babbling about his new moon lecture. That's it. Wait a minute, I said. There were plenty of years before you came. Those years should have experienced new moons too, right? How come the past shades were still affected? Come on, take the bait, I thought. Daniel scoffed at me. Well, I am not the past shades, am I? He raised his hand, spreading his shadow fingers. You see, this shade you refer to is nothing but a fraction of the primordial's power. Good. Tell us more. I thought. Primordial? Indigo asked. Her knees were shaking hard. The original inhabitants of this universe. Formless beings of pure darkness. Born out of the void. Long before the first sun blazed to life, he explained. You know the myth about the shadow people and the celestials. No one answered. I guess you wouldn't. It was an old and forgotten lore that I stumbled upon by sheer happenstance. Daniel said. Anyway, our ancestors knew of their existence and the danger they posed. They managed to banish them from this dimension. The primordials cannot hope to enter this dimension or even manifest their influence. For a moment, the room was silent. We were all waiting for him to continue. Unless they were, as I found out, permitted entry. Daniel said. So that night, 51 years ago. I said. You really are quick, Daniel said. The plan was to make my body a vessel to host one of the beings and control him. But they got to you first, right? Caprice said. You didn't complete the ritual. Which is why I had to improvise. The shade. Indigo gasped. And to think my act of desperation would give me exactly what I had wanted. Daniel cackled. But still, why now? I said. There were like 3 decades that the shade killed haunteds freely. Why show yourself now? He smiled. I didn't. Someone had access to your blood. Someone attempted to repeat and finish the ritual. Someone made me show up. So Major Coleman was right, Harmony said. The cult still exists. Who else could know how to do the ritual? But where are they? Kana asked. That really doesn't matter now, does it? Daniel said. What matters is I am in control of this power. At least for this night. Granted, I didn't even know I was in there until 3 days ago. It was still mostly Asga the Shade's thoughts. It was like seating at the back of the car while the Shade drives in front. I only had glimpses of what happened that night. Like that spiky-headed boy, Kent. Scarlet snapped. And you killed him. He cocked his head to one side, considering what Scarlet just said. Partly, yes. But like I said, I wasn't in full control. It was a constant tug-of-war with the Shade's urge to kill Zodiac-borns. Keeping my consciousness was hard enough. In the end, I disappeared that night. He changed his arm into a scythe. But last night, I had some practice. So all the changes 3 days ago, cutting up woods to destroy the lights, killing all those people, that was all you? I asked. Correct. Daniel said, brandishing his scythe arm like a kid who've just got a new toy sword. I knew it was too much of a change, Kato said. It was too human. Glad someone caught on, he said, changing his scythe arm back again. It may seem ridiculous, but spells and rituals require a great deal of time and experimenting. You'd be surprised how many teenagers we'd killed before we even figured out that blood was a necessary component. Long before we planned that mass kidnapping. He paused for a bit. Now that I think about it, that was a huge mistake. I could have just taken the safe route and abduct 1 or 2 from time to time. But I can't help it. I felt so close to finally completing the ritual. He sighed. Sometimes my passion ruins things for me. Let me get this straight, I said. The past shades were the primordial whatever using your soul as a link to this world. But now it's you, something from this dimension, who's in complete control so you can make full use of the void's power and the new moon. Wow. Daniel said, clapping. That's it. I'm anointing you an acolyte in my cult. The rest can start as initiates. He raised his hand and made a stop gesture. Before you say anything, you should know, Bren, one of my 12 acolyte, his sisig is the best. Then his eyebrows narrowed. He strokes his chin. I wonder if he's still alive. My plan to buy time has been working so far. Good thing my friends kept the questions coming without my prompting. But unless someone actually came up with a plan to escape, then all the time in the world will not help us. The conversation seems to start slowing down. And I am no closer to a solution. But why? I said, opening another topic, hoping to buy more time. Why do this at all? He's a sick, blood-drinking psycho, Kana suggested. Why else? Now that's just rude. Daniel said, pretending to be offended. Answer the question. Darius demanded. Daniel's expression turned serious. Imagine learning that there exist beings older than our universe, of other realities that our own minds could never have come up with, and knowing that such knowledge is within reach, would you not take action? And by taking action, Kana said. Of course you meant butchering all 12, what was it? Zodiac-borns. For your ritual. Of course. Daniel said with a smile. So that's it. Harmony said. So you did all these just because you're curious. But all these killing, Indigo said. Daniel sighed in exasperation. Oh, you sweet Na'vi girl, he said. Governments all over the world would do worse to possess the knowledge I have. Some might even sponsor me. Then why not go public? Kato said. Ask for backing to continue your academic research. If they got their greedy, destructive hands on what I have right now. Daniel said, staring at his shade arm that he turned into a blade. You can be sure it will be weaponized. Imagine an army that no weapons can fell. He returned his blade arm back to normal. This shade, Daniel said, admiring his shade hands, which he keeps closing and opening, will make conventional arms obsolete, ushering an era of supernatural warfare. Looks like you've got them beat, Kato said. Not my intention, Daniel said. This shade was not part of my plan, remember? You already killed 2, which means you don't have enough to do your ritual, I said. Oh, I wouldn't worry about that, Daniel replied. Then, from his stomach, the shade's shadow body rippled. And out came Kent's and Eris' torso, heads lolled backward. Kent's eyes were still wearing the expression it had the first night he was killed. I want to scream, but my throat tightened that only strange, choking sounds came out. You monster. Kana snapped. But their blood, Cato said, is mostly drained now, Daniel said, pulling Kent's and Eris' bodies back into his stomach. It'll have to do. And if you fail, what if it didn't work? I said, doing my best to discourage him from his plans. He just scoffed. With all 12 of you here, I doubt that very much, he said. Now I have indulged you long enough. This is my final offer. Join me and I will let you live. Together we will haunt other Zodiac-borns. My acolytes will welcome you into our family. Hypothetically, Cato said, how are we supposed to join you after you killed all of us for your ritual? Like I said, Daniel said, my rituals involve a lot of trial and error. Maybe with all 12 of you here, I'll only need just a few pints of your blood. Maybe that'll be enough for my goal. Worst case scenario, I drink you all dry, and then I turn you into MY shades. He said, cackling at the thought of his sick idea. So it's either you succeed and we live as a cultist or you succeed and we die. Cato said. Daniel shrugged. I see no problem with that. Sorry, but I'm not really into drinking blood, Kana said. You should try Twilight fans. Yeah, well, how about you drop dead, you disgusting. Whatever the thing you are. Scarlet followed. I see. Such a shame, Daniel said, shaking his head in disappointment. Oh well, I'll be sure to make good use of your bodies. He raised an arm which was still fully shade and it thrust forward. I jumped to the side, dodging the arm. What I didn't know was that Demi was behind me. The arm got him instead. We all reached for Demi as the arm pulled away. I managed to grab his sleeves. But the pull was too much that the fabric tore immediately. Demi was dragged away, and I am left holding a piece of his uniform. Demi, I shouted. No. Demi cried, struggling around Daniel's grip with his feet kicking in the air. Help, I don't want to die. He burst down crying and screaming. Please, don't let him kill me. I guess you'll have to do. Daniel said, looking disappointed with his catch. You let him go, you piece of. Scarlet unleashed a string of swear words. Please, you don't have to do this. Caprice pleaded. Daniel morphed his free arm into a blade. When Demi saw this, he stopped thrashing around and turned his head towards us. He fixed his black eyes on mine. Pleading, terrified eyes. Vergil, he said between sobs. Please, wait, I yelled, desperate to get Daniel's attention. I'll join your cult. I'll be an acolyte. But it looks like he didn't hear me, or didn't care about what I have to say because his blade arm opened a cut at Demi's neck. Chapter 31. Shrill screams filled the room. My mouth gaped open but my voice got stuck in my throat. For whatever reason, Daniel put our friend down. Demi's hands immediately went to his neck, trying to stop the curtain of red draping down the slit of his neck. Then Daniel did something that made my blood boil. He grabbed Demi's hands away, and with his free hand, pulled on his hair, forcing him to bow, making the blood gush down Demi's neck like an open faucet. No, Indigo slumped to the ground, crying. Demi. Caprice kept pleading Daniel to stop. Scarlet continued cussing him out while his brother and Leo threw chairs at Daniel, but it just bounced off of him, not even enough to distract him. There was nothing we could do but watched as the life slowly drained out of our friend's eyes. Lines broke out of the surface of the pool of blood on the floor, forming the cult's Zodiac-inspired ritual symbol. We had to get on our knees and draw this ourselves with brushes a while back, Daniel said, clearly amused by the convenience of the power of the shade. You won't get away with this, Cato said in a low voice filled with rage. But Daniel just scoffed at him. I disagree. We huddled backward to our side of the room. Daniel held up Demi's body over his head with one hand, catching the rest of Demi's blood with his mouth. I fought hard to push down the contents of my stomach coming up my throat. He licked his lips and tossed Demi's body as if our friend was a soda can he just emptied. I kept my eyes at Demi, looking for any signs that he's still alive. But he was sprawled over the floor, completely still. That should do it, Daniel said. Then he started speaking in a language I don't understand. I looked around. Dark living shadows covered the walls, the door, the ceiling. Escape is impossible. Help is not coming, not that it would make any difference. Our only defense, UV light, is rendered useless. It was hopeless. I sunk to the floor, my back against the wall. My mind wandered to my parents, to our planned trip to the ocean park that I was looking forward to so much. They're probably asleep right now, blissfully unaware that their only son is going to die tonight. I wondered how they'll take the news when they found out in November, especially when my dad and I reassured Mom I'd be fine. In front of me, my friends, screaming and crying. I should have been scared, knowing that one of us will suffer the same fate in a bit. Hysterical, even. But my body is washed with strange serenity. It must have something to do with accepting that I'm next, that I find myself at peace. Cato sat beside me. What's the plan? I can feel the corners of my mouth curling up into a smile. Did he really just ask me for a plan? We die. That's the plan. My smile became laughter. Uncontrollable, wheezing laughter. I laughed till tears rolled down my face. My friends turned around to look at me. Shock and worry are written all over their faces. Except Cato's. Look at you, I said to him. Too cool to be scared. You'd make a great Spock, you know. How's your Vulcan? He hit me. Guys, Harmony yelled. Are you seriously fighting right now? Demi's dead. I pushed myself up from the floor. He grabbed me by my uniform and forced me to stand up. Was it something I said? I sneered. But he fixed me with his serious eyes. You don't give up. Not now. Not after what Eris did for you. I gritted my teeth. Oh yeah, well, how about you come up with something and I'll do the punching. I swung hard that he staggered backward, releasing his grip on me. Harmony stood between Cato and me, pushing us away from each other. That's enough. You can figure this out, Cato said, wiping the blood from his lips. You're just not looking. Oh, I'm not looking, I said. The shadows covered every inch of the room, the floor, the ceiling, cutting us off from outside help and preventing any real chance of escape, trapping us here with that guy who wants to use us as guinea pigs for his science project. We have no way to defend ourselves. Our only chance is the sun, but I doubt Dr. Frankenstein over there would just sit quietly. Herrick Mea, Asgarmoth. Daniel finished the chant. Just then, red light shone from the circle. Kids, Daniel said. It's cool that you're planning on stopping me and all, but could you keep it down? I'm trying to work here. I kept my eyes on Cato. Did I miss anything? I said. Cato brushed Harmony's hand away and walked up to me. Like I said, you're not looking. We have something more powerful than sunlight behind me. I got his meaning immediately. And you assumed I can just use his magic circle. He's already activated it, Cato said. All we have to do is figure out how to use it. If it were easy, Daniel said, stretching his back. Everyone would have done it. It's not like you can just repeat what I've just said. Then he exhaled, slowly, and closed his eyes. He started chanting in that language I don't understand again. Cato ignored him. So I was thinking, if that summoned that shade, maybe we can use it to unsummon it. The place darkened. The symbol shone brighter. Arcs of red lightning shot out. The red lights died out. I couldn't tell if it worked because Daniel didn't look any different. That's one down, he said. 11 to go. Then his stomach spat out the bodies of Kent and Eris. Daniel looked down at the bodies of Kent and Eris. These kids won't be going anywhere, he said. Maybe I'll start with the live ones. He stepped out of the symbol and closed in. But we were already hugging the wall. There was nowhere to go. We screamed as he gets closer. But my mind was on what Cato had said. Maybe he's right. Maybe we can use it against him. The only reason why no one was able to replicate the ritual was that they don't have the spell to activate it. I remembered what Major Coleman said back at the museum. Without the proper incantation, drawing the symbol is no different from a doodle. But now Daniel has activated it. I just have to copy what he's doing. It's just a few steps more until he's on top of us. The front row of our group armed themselves with the plastic chairs. I thought about picking one up, but I decided to slink to the back. Think, I told myself. Cato gave me something to work with. Now my mind is in an overdrive to put the pieces together. First is the offering, our blood. Well, that's easy. Just get close to him and he will do the rest. But that means that whoever was being drained was surely going to die. I'm not going to do that. There are 9 prime candidates here, ripe for the picking. I'll just wait for him to pick his next target and launched myself after him. This isn't the time to be a hero. Besides, if this works, I could save all of them and get rid of the shade once and for all. Everyone wins. Daniel took a step closer. Darius threw his chair at him, who he just flicked aside. Come on. Focus, I thought. So I've got the offering. Next is the incantation. The only thing that made sense to me was the last 3 words he said. Herrick Mea, Asgarmoth. But why did he pause before saying Asgarmoth? In role-playing games, all spells end with the name of the god they were trying to summon. Is that why he paused? Because Asgarmoth is the name of his deity. But what's Herrick and Mea? I can't just say these words without knowing their meaning. Daniel yanked the plastic seats away from Leo and Darius' hands. I'm too late. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to see who it was going to be. I'm sorry, I thought, but I need more time. I kept telling myself that I wasn't abandoning them, that there was no other way. Someone's got to go. That's when I've heard Eris scream. My eyelids flew open. I looked around for Eris, but all I saw was that Daniel had Kana by her wrist while my friends were pulling her back. Images of the night Eris died flashed through my mind. Her face, contorted in pain and in shock. Is someone else going to die because of you? A voice said inside my head. A different kind of fear surged inside of me, overpowering the fear I had for my own life. I broke through my friends and launched myself on him. I was just a few inches from his back when I stopped midair. I looked down on my body and saw his free hand, enlarged, enveloping my body completely with cold fingers. I pulled out Kana's penknife and uncapped the hidden knife inside. You would have made a fine acolyte, Daniel said. Or a fine shade, but you just have to pull this stunt with that little knife. He brought me towards the symbol. My friends kept pulling on me, but Daniel swatted them aside with his free hand, sending them smacking to the walls. I saw them getting up as we entered the symbol, but Daniel shot his free arm to the ground. Tendrils of shadows crept along my friends' bodies and pulled taut, binding them in place. I thought I'd have some time to think while he figures out how to kill me with both his hands occupied. But he started groaning as if in pain. His eyes were rolling up and down, side to side, both looking at different directions. Then they popped. Long and narrow, limbs of flesh came bursting out, wriggling in the air like a pair of newborn parasitic alien life forms that had just broke through its host body. I screamed my lungs out. I crossed my arms in front of me, one hand spread out, the other clutching Kana's penknife, shielding myself from the horror. Suddenly, I'm starting to regret my actions. I didn't even know if just saying the words will make it work, but my body took off before I realized that. Then his mouth gapes open. His jaw kept dropping till I heard horrible crunching sounds as if the hinges in his jaw were being dislocated. The stench of his breath was nauseating. It made my eyes water. It smelled of rotting flesh, left to decompose under the hot sun. My stomach kept on contracting hard that I was in a constant battle forcing down the burning while climbing up my throat. I looked at my friends, still wrapped in shadows, still screaming my name. Swarms of the same but narrower appendages came out of his mouth, his nose, and his ears until all orifices of his face have been occupied. But many flopped down to his face and began to melt, like a candle, till they tear off and fell to the ground, leaving the part they've left behind bleeding, until only those from both of his eye sockets and 2 from his mouth were left wriggling. My throat was starting to hurt from screaming. Tears and sweat trickled down my face. But my mind was still clear enough to make the connection he wasn't in full control of whatever he was doing to his body. I can use this to my advantage. The wriggling stopped, allowing me a closer look. With all the adrenaline pumping through my body, my focus sharpened. My eyes immediately studied the muscle-like structures without me telling it to, as if my brain already knows that I'm about to die and is now in a rush to find a way out. Each looked like tongues, veiny and sinewy but tubular in shape, and with a mouth consisting of rows of tiny teeth, like the mouth of a lamprey, a fish that feeds by sucking blood. And it wasn't hard to guess what they were planning to do next. The 4 remaining tongues shot through the air. Each found a spot on my neck. I screamed when they bit down, latching themselves with their teeth. Vergil, Leo yelled. Let him go. Kana followed. But the pain wasn't bad. It was like being bitten by ants in 4 different places at once. I screamed more out of fear and shock than of in pain. Suddenly, I'm more afraid of dying than of what I was seeing. I was a mess, but the sharp jolt of pain forced me to remember my plan. I watched the dark liquid flowing through the veins of the tongues, gorging up as it delivers my blood down Daniel's throat. I remember how just having a small amount of my blood taken for my medical last Monday made me dizzy afterward. That experience doesn't even begin to compare to now, having these 4 suckers drain me empty at an alarming rate. I tried to make it seem like it was hopeless, that he had won so that he pays no attention to what I was going to do. I put up a real fight, kicking and struggling as if in mortal fear of dying, which I was. But if this dragged on, I won't have the strength nor the sanity left to test my plan. So I get to work. I grabbed a couple of the tongues attached on my neck with trembling hands. They were gross to touch, slippery and slimy, like the chicken intestines I helped my mom clean to make isaw. I squeezed my hand around the 2 of them so that I wouldn't lose my grip. The tongues felt hollow. They didn't offer much resistance. Alternating between sobbing and gasping for air, I brought Kana's penknife down on them and sliced them off. He threw his neck back, the other mouth shrieking in pain. That disengaged the suckers on my neck. I could feel the blood flowing freely down the wounds on my neck when I pulled the severed tongues off. "Ow," one of the mouths said in Daniel's voice. His own lips were drawn to a smile. The 2 mouths cackled in chorus, clearly enjoying my struggling. Of course, he wasn't worried. He knows how futile what I was doing. He knows I wouldn't be able to do any real damage to him, and he knows how his tongues will simply regenerate. And sure enough, his tongues were whole again, and attached themselves on spots on my neck once more. I can feel my strength fading. Keeping my eyes open was getting difficult. My entire body was shivering, not only out of fear but also because of how cold it suddenly had become. But now I have everything I need. Just in time too, because my thoughts were becoming hazy. Any longer and I might lose too much blood to retain rational thoughts. It's now or never. The tongues I was holding still had drips of my blood inside them. But just to be sure, I used them to wipe the blood that had run down my neck before it thickens and dries up, making sure that each is covered with my blood. Then I let it go. My mind was fuzzy, but I was able to say the only words I know of the incantation in my head. Herrick Mea, Asgarmoth. Chapter 32. Suddenly, Daniel disappeared. In fact, the whole room vanished. It was only darkness everywhere I look. But I could still see my hands, and see through my hands. There was a faint glow all over my body, and I was floating. I was no longer in pain. My mind clear. I tried touching my neck, feeling for holes, but there was nothing. "Virgo," the voice said inside my head, like an echo. "Who are you?" I shouted at the darkness. "You called for me." Herrick Mea, Asgarmoth. Suddenly, the translation came to me. "Hear me, Asgarmoth. I summoned you." There was a deep rumbling in my head, a burst of long and insidious laughter, and I answered. "Where am I?" I asked, still looking around. "And where are you?" 2 slits appeared on the wall of darkness, revealing huge, red eyeballs the size of a 2-story house, staring down at me. The same eyes as the shades. I should have been scared, but instead, I feel confident, strong, with no fear of death. At the threshold of your dimension and mine. The same place that greedy cultist was when he first offered me his soul. "Daniel, this is where he made the pact. And do you have something to give me, Virgo? It wants to make a pact. Like with Daniel. But what could I offer? What could it possibly want?" I thought about Daniel. He offered his soul to give this thing influence in our dimension, creating the shade. But now, the shade is in Daniel's control, leaving him no way of influencing our dimension. "It's Vergil," I said. "And yes, I do have something for you." The eyes stared at me. The voice inside my head stayed quiet. "Daniel took control of your powers," I said. "And you want it back, right? I will give you permission to enter our dimension, but only to take back Daniel. Is that what I want? But don't you want to be in control again?" The darkness parted, revealing a beautiful door that is made of light. The symbols of the zodiac is etched on it in a circle. Each symbol was glowing brightly, equidistant to one another. But what caught my attention were the scratches on its surface. What I want is for this door to open. Suddenly, something Daniel had said flashed in my mind unless they were, as I found out, permitted entry. A door. It's a seal, isn't it? That's why you couldn't do anything to our dimension. I asked the floating eyes, but the voice inside my head remained quiet. Then forget it. There's no way I'm going to do that. Commendable answer. Convincing, if only you weren't prepared to sacrifice one of your friends to buy time. My mouth gaped. How did you know? What do you think your friends will say when they found out? I couldn't answer. The thought of them finding out silenced me. Will they be disgusted? Enraged? Imagine their faces once they've learned of your despicable plan. Should I tell that greedy cultist now? I gritted my teeth. Anger is overwhelming my mind. That girl Kana, do you think she'll remain your friend? I was trying to save them. I snapped. I needed more time. If it takes one more death to save the rest, then so be it. What's wrong thinking like that? That's reasonable, right? I thought. I didn't have a choice. A choice, the voice inside my head gurgled, is what I am offering you. Your friends will die. That greedy cult leader will grow more powerful. None shall be able to stand against that prodigy of mine. I looked down to the darkness below me, but you can prevent all that. All you have to do is to put your hand on this door. I stopped myself to think this through. I open this door, they enter our dimension. What's a group of kids compared to the rest of our universe? The math is easy, but I find myself inclined to accept this thing's offer. Why not ask that of Daniel from the beginning? His light is weak. He wouldn't even scratch its surface. But yours is blinding. But there are 12 zodiacs. I can't open them all. I mean, if I wanted to. No, but you only need to open one. Virgo, I said, staring at the Virgo sign on the door. But the door remains closed, right? Yes. Without the other 11, it will remain closed. Which means you still can't enter our dimension, right? So there's no harm done. And I will take Daniel away, saving you and the rest from death. You will see your parents again. Go to Ocean Park. Stop that. You will be a hero, Vergil. The one who stopped the shade. Imagine the fame. Your face on every news outlet all over the world. You will be rich. You can finally buy your own Oculus Rift. I never said I'd do it. I shouted. This thing knows my thoughts, the way I think, my desires, things I'm not proud of. It knows I'm desperate. Then will you watch your friends die instead? No, I said. But what you're asking is a fair price to pay. I will take away your pain, your guilt. I don't know what happened, but suddenly I find myself standing at the door. My hand outstretched, just barely touching it. Go on. Save them. The door stays locked. I saved us. So there really isn't a reason for me not to touch it. This is the right thing to do, isn't it? Have you forgotten why Eris died? I leaned forward. The moment my hand touched the door, there was a force like a magnet that pulled my hand in. The symbols shone brightly. I can feel the energy being drained from me. The glow of my body seems to get fainter and fainter. My confidence, my courage was slowly diminishing. I tried to pull away, but I was completely stuck. I am starting to feel afraid once again. Virgo's light began to flicker until it died out. The other 11 symbols returned to their natural brightness. My hand became unstuck and I fell on the darkness. It was solid but cold, like sitting on a block of dry ice. I felt exhausted. But when I looked up at the big, floating eyes again, it was all I could do not to cry or freeze. I've done what you want. Now, it's your turn. Then permit me entry to your dimension so I can honor our pact. I permit you to enter our D dimension, only to take a Daniel away. And know nothing else. I accept. I was back in my pain-ridden, almost dying body. Daniel was still sucking my neck. It felt like I've been gone for some time inside the threshold, but back here. Nothing seemed to change, as if time stopped while I'm away. My sight was on the severed tongues on the floor. The ground pulled up a circle of shadow around the tongues that slowly swallowed it. The symbol started to glow again. From the looks of Daniel's face, he must have realized something's not right. He made a run for it, flinging me aside in the process with such a force that I was sent flying across the room. He didn't let go of his sucker's hold, so I could feel the sharp pain as its teeth ripped away pieces of flesh from my neck. My back thuds against the wall. When I dropped to the ground, Kana was the first to come to my side. "Are you okay?" she said. "You're bleeding," Darius said. "Bad." Here, Indigo took off her blazer and handed it to Darius. "Use this." While they tend to my wounds, I turned my attention to Daniel. The circular wall of red light was trapping him in. He morphed his hands into curved blades and tried to hack his way out of it. Each time his blades hit the wall of red light, black sparks flew. The red light shone brighter every time he attacks it. When he stopped, his arms were reduced to stumps, which he grew back in no time. He clasped his hands and stuck his elbows close to each other. His arms fused into a giant sledgehammer. He took a mean swing. There was a blinding flash and a loud boom that I instinctively averted my eyes. The shock wave that followed the impact had pressed strong wind against us. We all braced, but Kana and Darius kept their hands on my neck. I opened my eyes to see him lying on the ground. He came up on his knees. His hammer arms split in the center and returned back to normal. "What did you do?" Kato asked. "I saw him," I said. "Askermoth." "You," Daniel said. Fear registered on his face. "He listened to your summon." "What did you do?" "It was just one seal," I said. Now that I'm out of the threshold, I can feel myself being defensive of my decision, like I just now realized that what I did was wrong. "You stupid kid. You weakened the seal. You doomed this dimension," Daniel said. Between his feet, a web of cracks appeared. "No, no, no," he said, staring down in horror as the cracks kept growing and growing in diameter. "We had a deal," Daniel shouted at the ceiling, no doubt talking to his extra-dimensional benefactor. He turned to us. "Listen," he said. His voice wasn't angry anymore. "There's still time. Get me out of this. We have to reseal the door." "But you're going to kill us," I said. "Besides, I don't know how." Piece by piece, the floor inside of the circle crumbled, falling away until it resembled an incomplete jigsaw puzzle with missing pieces here and there. Daniel started skipping and hopping around for a foothold. The gap became wide enough for me to see what was underneath. A swirling mass of shadow, sucking up the last bit of concrete he was standing on. The air felt thin and increasingly cold. Or is this because I lost so much blood? The light from the fluorescent lamp above was being sucked along until it was dark. The only illumination we've had was coming from the red circle of light surrounding Daniel. The moment his feet touched the dark vortex, he was slowly sinking, as if he was standing on quicksand. He put his arms up. They extended all the way up the ceiling, puncturing holes into it with his claws to grab hold. That stopped him from sinking all the way. He was straining to lift himself up. "Did you really go over?" Kana asked. I nodded. Kato put a hand on my shoulder. "Vergil, what did you do?" I had no choice. Only Askermoth can stop Daniel. Kato didn't say anything. It didn't felt like he was accusing me either. But still, I felt far from being a hero. From the darkness below, two hands as black as the void they came from shot through the air. The hands seemed to have a mind of its own because they home in on Daniel's body with accuracy and precision. They extended up to the ceiling. Each grabbed his wrists and pulled. Daniel didn't let go. But the ceiling was just cement. It cannot hold the pressure being applied to it by the hands while supporting Daniel's weight. It ripped away, leaving Daniel with a huge chunk of stone. Several hands materialized from below, meeting Daniel in the air as he descended. He was a fish caught in a net. Hands kept shooting up from the void that he was blanketed over, wrapping around his limbs, pulling on his head. He kept thrashing about, roaring, cursing me, blaming me for bringing about the end of this dimension, but the hands began its slow descent. Inch by inch, Daniel was disappearing into the darkness, along with the living shadow surrounding the room. The dark vortex imploded on itself, swallowing the last of Daniel. The light of the fluorescent lamp streamed back. Parts of the floor flew back to its place, block by crumbled blocks, until the floor mended itself complete with the shining symbol, as if someone pushed the rewind button. For a moment, There was only the humming of energy of the red lights. When the lights died down, the symbol disappeared, like it was never there. You did it, Kana said. Cries of relief broke the silence. I couldn't keep sitting upright. I would have dropped to the floor if Kana hadn't caught me. She pulled me in closer to her, her hands still on my neck. The rest sat around us. Even though I'm resting on her shoulder, I couldn't understand what she was saying, what anyone was saying. It was all garbled noises like they're talking to me from above while I'm under the pool. I felt so weak. My head was so hazy that I was no longer aware of any pain my body was experiencing. And sleepy, so very sleepy. Is this what Eris felt back then? It's no use. I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. Last thing I remember was the sweet scent of strawberry.